Dear students, welcome back to our video lectures on machine learning for image processing. So far, we have discussed about supervised classification. Within the supervised classification, we have seen Bayesian classification, neural networks based classification as an examples of statistical classifier and a discriminative function based classifier. For coming up with, we also have discussed about clustering algorithms or unsupervised classification algorithms, more specifically on expectation maximization and k-means algorithms. We discussed about regression framework, wherein the objective is not to put the samples or the data points into different classes, but we would like to map the features of the data points to an output variable. We have seen the same framework, how it can be applied for classification as well. And in this video lecture, let us discuss about convolution neural networks. As we have seen so far, the feature extraction is a key starting point or a key important step for classification methods or even clustering methods. Of course, also for regression approaches. Now we will see that convolution neural networks has a remarkable ability of extracting high-level features from raw data itself. And we also see their ability to directly process the data in the original dimension. So far, we have discussed some of the image processing applications and operations, wherein the image is two-dimensional data. And we have seen how to extract features like the edges of an image, or more further features like histogram of an image or histogram of orientation gradients of an image, which acts as a shape feature. So these features can be represented in one dimension and they are used in classification algorithms. But however, these convolution neural networks has a great ability to directly take the two-dimensional data without disturbing the spatial information of the image in the images and extract the features from edge-like features to very high-level features, which will enable us to embed the information of the original image in a very high-level descriptive manner, and that will help us to take a decision on detecting a person or detecting an object or recognizing an object or identifying different regions in the object, understanding the images. So we will see now on the details of it. I'm sharing the screen. So let us start with what we know and let us see then the need of convolution neural networks, or what convolution neural networks are and what they can do. How do they compare? So let us start with some of the image processing tasks. So as we have seen, image is representation of pixels. So we don't have any abstract information or the qualitative information of the patch or the image object that we look in image. Computer looks only it as a matrix of elements. And the discussion initially was around extracting the features of the images. We have seen that convolution operation is one of the very powerful operation to extract the features like edges in an image or corners in an image, or to smooth image, that is to remove noise in an image, and so on. So here, as you can see, if I perform convolution operation with this kind of mask, as we discussed before, it's an edge mask, wherein you can get the gradient in the x direction, in the horizontal direction, and the gradient lines can be seen here. Similarly, if you find the gradient with this vertical mask or with vertical kernel, okay, we can consider our vertical filter, then you can get the vertical edges. Okay, so these two put together will give us the edges in x and y directions. When we put them as magnitude root of x square plus y square, we can get highlighted all the vertical and horizontal edges. And angle of edges also can be obtained, as we have discussed in the histogram of orientation gradients. Okay, so and we also have seen that the some of the image processing operations can be posed as convolution operation itself. One example we discussed before is finding edges, finding corners, and feature extraction in images in general. We can also see that some of the like filtering operations in image processing are very important. So for example, if we want to remove noise, okay, what we do is filtering of this Z with some smooth kernel. Okay, similarly, if this is the convolution operation, those who are not very familiar with convolution operation, it is important to revisit, because we will discuss just in few seconds or few minutes that the neural networks is enhance their capabilities through the use of convolution operation on two-dimensional data or multidimensional data. And these neural networks with enhanced capability of convolutions are referred to as convolution neural networks. The key in convolution neural networks is to apply convolution operation appropriately at several levels or at several stages of processing. Okay, and we will also see that this convolution kernels, which we are prefixing here as some W matrix, like for edges 1 1 1 0 0 0 -1 -1, or for finding corners 4 -1 -1 -1 -1, and so on. In convolution neural networks, we will not prefix them. Okay, here we are prefixing them, but whereas in convolution neural networks, we do not prefix them and they are learned. Okay, so to perform the guided operations, the guidance is given by the overall objective function, and these kernels are guided by that, and we will be able to get the effective learning of these kernels itself in convolution neural networks. Okay, so before we move on and discuss those aspects, you can see that convolution operation is, if you put at any, the kernel is placed at any location, what we do is we do element multiplication. Usually kernel is put with flipping in convolution operation, as we discussed in the prior classes. And the as you can see, W -1 -1 into f of x -1 comma y -1 plus and so on. Okay, so this will effectively help us to find out the assimilative information of the kernel placed at that location. So if the assimilative information is denoising, then this is a smoothing operation in this patch of image. If the assimilative information that here is finding edges, then this is all +1s and these are all -1s, and gradient is what is effectively found at this location. Okay, similarly, vertical gradient is found if these are 1s and these are -1s. Okay, and so on. Okay, so these in essence, what effectively does is finding the dot product or the element wise multiplication of the kernel with the patch around the kernel. Okay, and that is done at every location in convolution operation. Okay, so this is done at f of x comma y. It will be done again at f of the next pixel, f of x comma y +1, and so on in an image. Okay, if we were to perform convolution operation. Okay, so the convolution operation in image processing itself has very significance. See how the blurring happens in natural images. If you want to model, what happens is an object is moving like this, and we are capturing with a fixed camera. Okay, this fixed camera is capturing an object which is moving. Okay, so what happens? It captures in the exposure time, not just one pixel gets exposed to it. Okay, it may capture during that time 5 pixels, and in fact it's the what the pixel intensity represented in the camera sensor is average of 5 pixels. So in essence, this operation can be represented as a convolution operation of the blurring kernel with the image, and that you can see here. This is what at every instant of this here, you can see that this comes from averaging of these 5 pixels. If the camera is moving like this, then average happens in horizontal direction. If the camera is moving like this, average happens in the like oblique direction, 45 degrees direction, and so on. In the direction of movement of the camera, the average happens, and that average is being shown as a kernel or a filter. And that convolution, if it happens, the averaging operation at every location can be formulated as a convolution operation. If that happens, we see that blurring is happening. Okay, so there are some processes, conventional processes in image processing to restore such things. Okay, now what we are trying to say is, if we want to deconvolve this, and if you want to get f back, what we do, we can convolve both sides with h inverse, a inverse of this kernel. So that again can be posed as a convolution operation on G with h inverse to get f back. Okay, so in essence, the convolution neural networks has the power, or the convolution operation itself, if it is properly designed with proper kernel, it has the power to restore the blurring. It has the power to restore, to find features, okay, to restore noise and so on. So many of the image processing and computer vision operations are effectively done through the convolution operation itself. This is the key finding for the development of convolution neural networks. Now let us see, even here, if you want to identify the ranges, number of ranges, what we need to do is, we need to see identical pattern. Where is it in this? See, if I am able to design a kernel which is of identical pattern of this patch, then what does happen? If I convolve over the whole image, wherever the convolutions are high, giving high score with the pattern of this versus the like convolution in the edge image, I will obviously be getting the high value in the convolution output. So it indicates that there are edges at the corresponding locations. So even object detection can also be posed as convolution operation with the proper design of the convolution kernel. Okay, so not just the image processing operations, but the computer vision operations now are also can also be posed as convolution operation. See, in the Harris corner detector, what did we discuss? Corner points are those which are quite distinct from the neighbors. So there can be one mask or a couple of kernels which look that they are distinct from the neighborhood. Center location value is quite distinct from the neighborhood. In that case, it will be able to identify the key points. So finding key points can also be done through convolution operations, effective convolution operations. So many of the image processing and computer vision tasks can be guided by convolution, proper convolution kernel design, and that is the base for convolution neural networks. Okay, so let us see now what convolution neural networks are. And you can see here that once we find key points, we have the provision or the ability to fuse them or to make them as a panoramic view, or to stitch them. Even the face detection, if I say that this is the feature I am looking for, where eyes are white, more white, and this is a little black, okay, or this is a little black and this is white, this is black and this is white. In such cases, we will be able to find them through this kind of kernels. This kind of kernel, if you place here, the eyes are black and this is white. Similarly, this kind of kernel, this is white and this is black. Okay, similarly in all the faces. So we will be able to find the face of the persons also by template matching, and the template can be one of the learned kernel itself. So convolution operation is useful even for object detection. So even for feature extraction, shape-based feature extraction, convolution operation is also useful. Okay, we'll see that we may have directional kernels which will detect all 45 degrees directions giving high response. There may be some directional kernels which will be giving high response for 90 degrees and so on. And this has to be, but the problem here is, for every different application, we can't come up and say that this is the ideal kernel. So these, given the input data, there should be some objective driven, okay, algorithm to design this kernels itself. Now the question is, how do we do that? The solution for this is convolution neural networks. Okay, so this can be applied in plenty of applications like face detection, human non-human classification, face recognition, attendance system, okay, and so on. Let us see how these convolution features comes into the neural network framework, and then it helps us to find the feature extraction as well as the classification. So far as we have seen, the machine learning pipeline goes like this. It starts with pre-processing, that is aligning the fish or segmenting the fish or any object, and then after alignment, pre-processing, and intensity adjustments and so on, after several pre-processing steps, we'll go on to the feature extraction stage. In feature extraction, we extract the effective features, the handcrafted features, like the length of the fish, width of the fish, or number of fins, and so on. And subsequently, that information is what we are giving to classification frameworks. The classification framework can be like the neural network Bayesian classification and so on, as we discussed. So now we see that the convolution neural networks has a remarkable ability that they combine the several stages of this. In fact, they can do pre-processing, feature extraction, and classification to a greater extent, and through a single network or a single process or procedure, but with reasonably good number of parameters and learning of them. Okay, so we'll see that. So this is one ability of convolution neural networks. The other aspect is, as we have seen, the feature extraction changes from domain to domain. You can see that in image, feature extraction is mainly guided by edges or by finding bounding boxes and so on. Okay, or shape features like histogram of orientation gradients and so on. But whereas in audio, if you want to enhance the audio or to understand the audio, one of the important features people look is short time Fourier transform. That is, you take a short time, okay, a window of signal, okay, and in this window you find a Fourier transform. That is, the Fourier transform is written as one column here. Okay, you take the second window and again find the Fourier transform of it, and so on you do it. This is the time axis, that is window 1, window 2, window 3 are here, and this is the frequency axis. In that window, what are all the frequencies existing? So this will tell us in this duration, these frequencies are higher, these frequencies are smaller. In this duration, none of the frequencies are higher. Okay, like that. So this short time Fourier transform, okay, or windowed Fourier transform is very effective in identifying the speech features. Okay, on the top of it, there are several other processes people do to identify what is speech that is spoken, who is the speaker that is speaking, okay, and who, like which language it is, okay, and so on, many other things. Okay, translate from one language to other language, understand and write it in script from voice and so on, many other things. Okay, so all audio processing aspects come from feature extraction from audio to audio features and then bringing into some of the high level inference. Image processing comes from image to vision, so image to features and then goes like this. And the text to some kind of organization of text, okay, and then understanding the text. So what is common here is only the classification so far after you get the features. But now, given this convolution neural networks, it has combined the ability of image processing, audio processing, and text processing. So many of the things can be put in common framework and they can be analyzed and they can be high level tasks and understanding can be done from them. Okay, so that's where the intersection of all signal processing aspects came into the machine learning aspects. Previously, they were dealt as two separate streams. In fact, the signal processing was mainly dealt in electrical engineering stream. And the classification, after we get the features, people used to do classification and finding out methods for classification and statistical placement of them and so on, analysis of them was majorly taken by computer science department. So now given this, there is a big fusion, or there is a very thin demarcation between the signal processing, computer vision, image processing, machine learning, and deep learning. So all have been tackled in a integrated frameworks to understand the data and to interpret the data and to use the data in a very effective manner and to automate many of the processes. That's where the driving of the deep learning has come, and the success also lies in many of the people of different disciplines working on the same. So we have seen previously, we started with a neuron. So as the convolution neural networks name indicates, it also is built upon neuron and neural networks. So we have seen that the neuron essentially is a mathematical form of neuron, essentially takes several inputs, features, and weigh them. And the classification is taken, the effective weight, if it is greater than something, it is one class, otherwise other class. So it's based on the effective weighted sum being positive or negative, or the learning parameters that makes the all input samples of one class to put in one side, on the other class to put in other side. Okay, that's how the learning of this neuron goes. And subsequently, we also have seen that neuron is not capable of giving nonlinear decision boundaries or classifying non-separable samples. We have seen that a network of neurons is necessary to put the to classify the non-separable samples into different classes. These two can be put into one class and these two put into another class based on a network of neurons. And the network of neurons can also be trained based on the objective function that we define here and using the gradient descent. That is same principle as neuron, but with an additional use of chain rule, in the sense that we have the several layers of these neurons, okay, and neural networks. So from this layer to layer, one chain rule will like the back propagation of error from here to here and subsequently from here to here happens. If you want to update here, the error back propagation from here to here, here to here, and from all these to here. Okay, so that happens and so on. So we have seen that the chain rule will enable us to update the weights. We also have seen in the previous discussions that the weight update at any layer, do j, jk, for example, if you want to update, it is effectively is the input at this front end multiplied by the error at this rear end. Okay, as we have seen, yj, which is the input here. Okay, yj is the input here. Okay, now multiplied by delta net k or delta k, which we have defined earlier. So delta k is effective value of the error at this location. Okay, from here to here, what is the back propagated error? Delta net k. And this is yj. These two multiplied, what we give is the weight update delta w kj. That's what we have seen earlier. As you can see here, delta wjk is equal to yj into delta net k. Okay. Similarly, now you can see that this happens at every element. So you can even write in vector form. Okay. So same thing happens even for the update of weights in the previous layer, in the sense that input to hidden layer. So as you can see here, this is do delta wj if you want to do. So it is xi into delta net j. Okay, so this whole thing is written as delta net j, right? So this effectively delta net j or delta z. We have delta j, we have written in our notation, earlier notation, into xi. So it is essentially the error here, the input here multiplied by error here will enable us to find delta wij here. Okay. See, this writing chain rule and updating the weights is possible only in smaller networks. If we have 10 layers of this, we will not be able to do that writing chain rule and updating in a comfortable way. As we have seen that even for 2 layers, we have seen that summation has to be taken or not taken is not a trivial task. Okay, and it the complexity increases to back propagate. However, the logic that we have just discussed, that if you want to update any weight, you just multiply the input here value, input value here by the error value at this rear end. That will enable us to weight update. And then wt plus 1 equal to wt minus eta times delta w, whatever we get here. Okay, so that's a what is usually followed for the update of weights in deeper networks. When even in deeper networks, this is the procedure is fine, but the thing is, as we discussed earlier, there are some limitations for applying the neural networks to deeper networks, neural network training to deeper networks. Okay, so we will see that. So effectively, if we write in matrix form, what we are essentially doing is the input yj. So if we want to write yj is equal to some weight matrix into x. Similarly, zk is weight matrix into y. At this moment, I will not go into the deep details. Probably in the next course, we will discuss them in more details. But now let me just tell that if we write a neural, represent a neural network like this, h is in some sense the weighted w1 into x and s is equal to w2 into h. However, we have also an activation function. Okay, that takes, okay, s equal to w2 into h. That is pass through activation function. Activation function can also be a maximum of 0 comma w1 into x. Okay, so that can also be, say if we see here, as we have seen w2 into, okay, h is written as and f is the output here, but h is equal to max of 0 comma w1 into x. Okay, so this can also be an activation function. So you can assume here it is simply so let me write s is equal to find f2 of to our previous, yeah, I am writing f as an activation function, f of w2 into h. We need to write, right? So h itself is again f of, I will give space here, f of w1 into x, right? So this is what is the output. So as you can see here, this w1, w2 encompasses the weights and biases together. Okay, w1 into x is what is output here, net value, and that is sent through activation function is h. Okay, and then that is sent through multiplied with w2 is what is net value here, and that is sent through f is the output. So here what I'm saying is the f function, f of a net value, can also be as maximum of 0 comma net value. So this is also a possible activation function. What is this activation function referred to as? Rayleigh activation function, because rectified linear unit. As we discussed, in the negative direction it becomes 0, and the positive direction it will be as it is. Okay, so and we also have some this kind of representation is very useful when we want to deal with larger or deeper neural networks. There is also an interpretation that the weight matrices now, if you see, they have a reasonable appearance that they look like the similar class. Okay, so that is also the interpretation of neural networks is also possible to some extent. And what we essentially, how we can interpret is, these are anyway features and these are output classes. So if class 1 features, if I see all the weight vectors connecting to class 1, okay, and then put them in a image form, that is, see if I see from here, so there is one vector, so class 1 if we consider, okay, so there is the it is 100 cross 10 cross 100. So if we put this 10 cross 100, okay, as an with training to the class 1 having the higher probability, then this 10 cross 100 looks like a class 1 image. Similarly, if I train whenever there is a output variable that after training, an output variable is giving maximum probability for 5th class, then the corresponding features look like 5th class image. Okay, so the class gets fired when the feature representation looks like original image. Okay, that you can understand in that way. Okay, let's move on. So as I said, there is a still another few limitations in deep neural networks. See, as we have seen, so if I have a deeper network, it will be function of several activation functions. As we also have seen, let me let us see if we can erase this. Let's clear all. Yeah. So let us see now what's the limitation of learning deeper neural networks. As you can see here, see each of the, there are several activation functions. And if you want to update the weights in the from in a 4-layer network, what will happen? See, in the 2-layer network, you have seen that there are 2 f dashes. See, you can see here delta w jij or ji if you want to do. Effectively, you have 1 f dash here And even this delta net k has another f dash. So two f dashes has come. And what we have seen in the earlier discussion, especially when we are discussing about regression, is that we have seen that for sigmoid activation function, f dash is equal to f of x into 1 minus f of x. And f of x is in the range 0 to 1, and hence f dash x, which is equal to f of x into 1 minus f of x, will only be in the range 0 to 0.25 or 1 by 4. And hence, we will not be able to we will only be able to see that at any point of time, any of the f dashes will have a maximum value of 0.25. And now to find out delta W4, that is weight update here, you are multiplying 4 f dashes. May not be in the same form, but with different other elements. Still, this will be, so a maximum value of this is 1 by 4 power 4, which is a quite smaller value. And now if I want to design a 10 layer network, 1 by 4 power 10, which is quite smaller, and this delta W4 tend to be 0. And hence what happens in a deeper networks, all these weight updates, delta W's become 0. And hence we will not be able to see learning of the neural network. That's a very important problem in deeper neural networks. The solution to that was given by ReLU activation function, which we just discussed now. This activation function will enable us to see that in negative direction, the f dash is 0, but in positive direction, since it is net value, as you can see that it's net value, then the value f dash will be 1. So in positive direction, f dash is 1, okay, which is actually a linear in positive direction, okay, maximum of 0 comma net. That's what is ReLU activation function. Its net output f of net equal to net in positive direction, f of net equal to 0 in negative direction. Thus, in negative direction, its gradient is 0, but in positive direction, its gradient is 1. And hence, what happens is that the effective, the gradients doesn't die, at least with this activation function. So many of the deeper networks follow this. And there are several other tricks people follow or deeper networks are designed with to combat this diminishing gradients problem. So this was one hurdle or bottleneck for designing the deeper networks. So the other important issue with the conventional feed forward neural networks is, say, assume that we have actually a EA like this, and we want to feed into a neural network. And then what we want to do? We want to classify it into one of the class or 26 classes. Now assume that instead of giving A here, we have given an A which is slightly shifted. Okay. Now you see that the slightly shifted version of this, if you see, then the it will not look as we have seen here by in one dimensions, because all the pixels that are seen previously here will no more be here. So the weights that are trained here will no more work, okay, for the input which is here. So now the A is shifted here. So these are the real A, but the weights trained are for this location. Okay, so even a small shift will make the whole network neurons to see different things, and hence they will not be able to perform classification appropriately. So any of the shifts or rotations or scales will have this problem when we convert data from 2 dimensions to 1 dimension. Even the missing data is also an important problem because it will only give partial information. But however, if we are able to deal with 2-dimensional data directly, these shifts hardly matter, because the 2-dimensional information, when we see here versus here, there is the change is quite minimal. Okay, the network looking at 2-dimensional information will be more robust than network looking at 1-dimensional information. And the same process, if it goes at this location, it will be even more robust. See, convolution operation, whatever we do here, we also do here. Okay, so and thus, if there is a uniform operations that are going on through convolution, that will be a fetching for feature extraction rather than having different operations at different spatial locations. These are all the limitations of conventional neural networks, and convolution neural networks will combat them. So as I said, the convolution neural networks doesn't handle the pre-processing and feature extraction separately, and they take the feature extraction, pre-processing and the classification together and provide input-output mapping or input-output relationships to perform either classification tasks or many of the high-level information tasks, informations or understandings. How do they do? Is they start with very low-level features and they try to get the little high-level features through convolution, that is finding, say, edges or corners and so on. They combine them, they get little more high-level features, and they may get even high-level features which abstractly look like what humans look. Okay, and then they will be able to take a decision by looking at not just one or two neighborhood information, but the whole image information. And that is the power of convolutional neural networks. They may not exactly find out these features, but they essentially look at the whole image, and the features are high-level features to take effective decisions. And the kernels are being learned through an objective function. Jan LeCun is the person who has proposed this convolutional neural networks first, and then there are subsequent developments in convolutional networks. We will see in the next video lecture what exactly convolutional neural network is. So we have seen that the processing of information through convolutions has a quite importance, as can be seen in several other examples even here, that finding edges with some kernels will enable us to extract different kind of features. Okay, we also have seen that processing the information in its original dimension is very sought for, not to lose any of the information due to dimensionality reduction, especially reorganization of the content, and to preserve the spatial neighborhood. We also seen that the deep neural networks are possible with ReLU kind of activation functions. Given these developments, the convolutional neural networks are based on convolution operation for feature extraction, coming up with deep neural networks with appropriate activation functions, and coming up with a cost function which will learn all these kernels effectively. So we'll see that in the next lecture. Thank you.